call the meeting to order, beginning with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to 2.01. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second that. No, I'm too slow.
Any questions on said agenda? Roll call, please.
Director Castro.
Yes.
Director Champion.
Yes.
Director Dorder.
Yes.
Director Eastman.
Yes.
Director Lynch.
Yes.
Director Pevich.
Yes.
Director Smithson.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 3.01, our Veterans Day recognition. I'm going to turn things over to Director Pevich.
Okay, I have been charged to read the Veterans Day recognition. Veterans Day was November 11th. We'd like to recognize the 2023 BCSD veterans. Larry Bush, United States Army. Paul Castro, Army. Brian Deach, Marines, hoorah. Robbie Fern, Marines. Thomas Hackett, Marines. Brian Hess, Navy. James Keel, United States Marines. Gary Larson, Army. Daniel Milburn, Army. Gerald Reardon, Air Force. Hold on, I gotta scroll. Kevin Rowling, National Guard. David Silverberg, Navy. John Staber, Air Force. Diana Williams, Army. Deb Thomas, Air Force. And our new staff for 23-24, Kevin Hurt, Army and National Guard. Marty goes by Danny Burrows, Army. Chris Henson, Navy. Patrick Larkin, Navy.
Do we have anybody in attendance from that lengthy list?
If so, would you please stand?
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you, Director Pevich. That moves us to 3.02, National Apprenticeship Week. And Director Dorder.
So tonight we would like to recognize the current apprenticeship programs that we have. We have 3 that we are going to recognize: the emergency medical technician with Medic EMS, Medic of Scott County as of January 1st. Those ladies, if you would stand up, are Abby Gamble.
Mrs. Hoyt, will you please stand with them so you can say
Haley
things
Hoyt
afterwards?
is their, sure. Haley Hoyt is their advisor. Abby Gamble, Adriana McGee, Peyton Morse, and Caitlin Reese. And with the welding program, with John Deere Davenport Works, Owen Allison. And with the teacher apprenticeship, these are staff members that are registered or have registered apprenticeships with the Bettendorf schools: Lydia Campion from Grantwood, Nicole Linan at EMS, and Shelley Shaner at EHS.
I've come to talk a lot about apprenticeships, but I just want to take every opportunity to celebrate these humans. I actually was meeting with Owen last week, and I had already invited them to come, and he said, "Do I need to come, Mrs. Hoyt?" And I said, "Yes, you need to come." And he said, "But I don't want any praise. I'm just doing my job." And that really made me realize that that's what, gosh darn it, I am going to cry. That's what all of them are doing, is they're just doing their job, and they're doing such a wonderful job at it. I don't come across someone in their respective places of employment that just doesn't ooze about how wonderful they are and how they're on top of everything, and they really are bringing a new sort of life into their organization. So I am just so proud of them, and I am thankful. I don't believe we have any of our staff members that are doing the teacher appreciation, or excuse me, the teacher apprenticeship, but they are working so hard for our students every day, and then they're committing to go every night to class or to log on to their classes, so then they can come back into our schools in a whole new way and help our Bettendorf students. So I'm just so grateful. And then I have certificates of appreciation. So Owen, come on up and turn around so they can see you. Peyton. Caitlin. And then we'll put a picture of everyone else online. Go ahead. The last thing thing I just want to say is that not only do we hear how wonderful they are, but they all are required to do evaluations as part of their apprenticeship, and every one of their evaluations has come back just truly glowing. Owen probably already has a job at this point. We have been told that he is the one that is always there before everyone else. He's putting in hard work, willing to stay and do overtime, and I've heard the same about all of our wonderful EMT students. So they just are doing great things, and they are all certified, as we know, but I do just want to take this opportunity to recognize Peyton. Peyton, will you stand up? So Peyton is our first nationally certified apprentice from Bettendorf Schools. So she is nationally certified as an EMT. She could go to any state she would like, and they will transfer her certification into that state, even though I'm really trying to keep her here for after graduation, but she could go anywhere, and I just think that is a huge accomplishment, so I want to recognize her. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and such great representation of Bulldog Pride.
Yeah, and I just want to note, and then when we look at apprenticeships like medic, EMT, EMS staffing is critical throughout the country right now. It's just not a Scott County problem, and for us to have these feeder programs for Scott County EMS or any service is amazing, and I just applaud you for stepping up and doing that, because I can't imagine doing that at your age, to be honest with you, and seeing what I see at work at that age. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. That brings us to 3.03, BHS All-State Ensemble.
Tough
Privilege.
act to follow.
I know,
Jeez.
I'm sorry.
Well, the 2023 All-State Music Festival will celebrate the 77th anniversary of this event. District auditions for the 278-piece All-State Band, 214-piece All-State Orchestra, and 601-member All-State Chorus were held Saturday, October 21st. About 17% of the students who were auditioned, and many students choose not to audition, so you're already taking from an elite group. 17% are selected for membership in the All-State ensembles. They will be rehearsing in Ames on Friday and Saturday next, the 17th and 18th, and the concert will be presented to the public Saturday evening at 7:30 in Hilton Coliseum on the Iowa State University campus. Iowa Public Television will record this and rebroadcast it, so those of us who can't make the trip can look at our local listings to get to see the concert. It is sponsored by the Iowa High School Music Association and the Iowa Music Educators Association. And the following Bettendorf students have the highest honor available by being selected as members of these ensembles. For orchestra, Stella Lund on bass, and Callista Rasmer on viola. In band, Linnea Arnell-Yu on French horn, Emma Pearson on clarinet. This is her second year and is also orchestra. Liam Rainberg, clarinet, Daniel Stevens, trumpet, Kaylee Wolf, fourth year recognition on trumpet, also orchestra. Congratulations to all of these.
Thank you, Director Lynch. That brings us to 3.04, our student board representative. Mr. Silver, come on up.
Good evening, directors. Ample parking tonight, isn't there? So, yeah, we're back. Just waiting a moment for the slides.
I'm sure we'll officially acknowledge this in an upcoming event, but I noticed you also were busy over the weekend, and congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
And before we get started, anyone who came for recognition that does not want to hang out all night, now's a good time. But thank you. And I know some of you are headed back to work, so.
Work. School events.
Thank you again, guys,
Thank
for being
you.
here. Not to clear the room before you, Charlie.
Oh, I know that.
Not to clear the room.
No worries.
Take it away, sir.
Perfect. All right. So, to start off with, the Student Council went to the Student Council State Conference this year. We were in fact the winners of 2 awards, the Iowa Association of Student Councils Honor Council, which is a major award in the state of Iowa, but then even more, we were a National Gold Council of Excellence. I believe we were only one of 3 in the state to receive that this year, so it's a huge honor, and I'm super proud of the Student Council. And now, the Hunger Drive. You guys have heard about it for the past 6.5 weeks, and it is over. I'll reveal the final number at the end for those of you who have not heard of it, but first we'll go through some of the events that we did. To start off, we had the kickoff. So about a third to half of the Student Council went to Spotlight Theater in Moline. There we had a wonderful day where we got together. Some members performed in a skit, which was a rendition of multiple songs from High School Musical, except themed around the Hunger Drive. And we beat PD. So we got that 2,000 pounds of food head start towards our total in the Hunger Drive. Next up was the silent auction that was at the final football game of this year on October 20th. And I'm super proud to say that we sold all 31 baskets, raising a total of $2,840. It took a lot of work to get all of these baskets together, and I do want to say one more time to any staff members here in the audience who are from VHS and helped assemble together a basket, we really appreciate you guys because those baskets contributed hundreds of dollars to the Hunger Drive. So thank you, VHS staff. Then capture the cans. I didn't have any pictures of it this year, but it is the annual tradition where students get together and in a Hunger Drive themed capture the flag game, they competed and had a lot of fun. Next was school fundraising. So this has been an initiative that expands upon what we've been doing this year, and that's involving the high school, middle school, and elementary school levels. So we do it every year, but this time we had a competition. At the middle school and elementary school levels, we had classes compete to see who could raise the most. I believe I discussed this in my previous presentation, but it was super successful. I know that we got several $100s in donations and at least 80 boxes of food. So we really appreciate the district parents and those who donated at the elementary and middle school levels, in addition to the high school. So thank you. Next was restaurant benefits. We went crazy this year. This is only some of the ones that we had, but we included Country Style, Pancheros, and Your Pie. And these were all great fundraisers that just added on to what we already had, and they were fantastic for raising even more funds. And who could forget community soliciting? We had not 1, not 2, but 3 different days this year where we went out. I think we hit about half of Bettendorf. And with that, and the donating at Hy-Vee and Fairway, we were able to raise the majority of what we got. You'll figure out what we got in a little bit. But here's some pictures. I know a ton of us went around on Halloween evening. I personally went around in a costume, trick-or-treating, door to door, and it's a lot of fun. It's a completely unique experience. And directors, if any of you want to do that next year, I would be happy to join you if I'm in town. We'll go trick-or-treating together and support the Hunger Drive.
Easy for you to say.
So the final push. In the last week of the Hunger Drive, just last week, we had one last chance. We knew that PB was doing pretty well, and we decided, no, we don't want that. So after seeing one of their flyers, we said, all right, meal marathon time. And so we held a basic spirit days where we just themed them around people bringing in donations, including mainly meals. But with that, we were able to raise a bit more just at the end, and it gave us one final push. So now, the grand total. $62,785 pounds of food raised. That is a lot. I know the number of meals is on the next slide, but I do want to say this is super heavy. It does take a full truck every year to bring this food over to the Riverbend Food Bank, and it was an amazing experience. We as a council are super proud of what we raised. We did not win against PB this year, but that's okay because we just know how to come back even stronger next year. And we still raised a ton. By my own calculations, between us and PB, we raised over half of what the Student Hunger Drive between at least a dozen area schools raised for the Riverbend Food Bank, so it's hugely impressive. And 178,000 meals were donated. For reference, that's enough to feed a family of 4, 3 meals a day for 40 years.
Wow.
It's an incredible what we were able to accomplish as a community.
Shirley, do you know off the top of your head how much more this is from as compared to last year? Isn't it?
So I believe it's about 6,000 pounds of food less than
Was
last
it?
year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then other events of note. As I said earlier in the year, I wanted to involve some more other student organizations within the school, so I included 3 today. The first one is LULAC. I know they hosted a successful trivia night this October. Then NHS has a blood drive tomorrow. It is critical that we get donations. We need them in the area. They're super important. And I'll have a QR code on the next slide for everyone to scan who is available and would be willing to donate. Then the Future Business Leaders of America chapter here at Bett High School is hosting a pancake breakfast on Saturday. That is November 18th. It'll be from 8 to 11 and admission is $5. Come join us in the BHS Commons for some pancakes and to help support the March of Dimes charity. So if everyone who is able would pull out their phones at this time and scan the QR code, that will take you to the page to sign up to be a donor in tomorrow's blood drive. Through there, you'll be able to sign up for your time slot and it should show you all the necessary information.
It worked beautifully. Nice job.
Glad to hear it.
Questions for Charlie?
Or answers for
Or
Charlie.
answers? Although Charlie has most of them, so. Charlie, thank you.
Thank you,
As
Charlie.
always.
Thank you, awesome.
Great job. We
Thank-
appreciate you.
Thank you guys. It's been wonderful seeing you for this past year.
All right, that brings us to 4.01. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second it.
All right, roll call.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorder?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Yes.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yeah.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 5.01, the American Education Week proclamation. Director Smithson.
Whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas education employees, be they teachers, guest teachers, custodians, bus drivers, librarians, or support staff, work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. And whereas schools are community linchpins pinning together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. Now therefore be it resolved that November 13th through 17th, 2023 is hereby proclaimed as American Education Week within the Bettendorf Community School District.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the approval of this proclamation?
So moved.
And a second, please?
So seconded.
Thank you. And roll call.
Director Dorder?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Would you be mad if I said no?
Yes.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 5.02, the Scanlan Center Paraeducator Fellowship presentation. That's yours? Yes, thank you. We are incredibly lucky tonight to have our team of paraeducators who graciously said yes to this intensive fellowship. I was learning even more about it this afternoon in a meeting I was in. But they've come tonight to share some of the training they've already been through. They've been in their in-person modules. They're getting ready to switch to their online modules, but I'm excited for them to share the amount of time and work that they have invested in this. We also have our Director of Student Services and our Social Emotional Behavioral Health Coordinator. And this all would not be possible if it wasn't for the collaboration and partnership at the Scanlan Center for School Mental Health out of the University of Iowa. I'm going to turn it over to Karen Allison.
Yep, so I would like to introduce my team. Sarah Harris, Sam Farah, Deb Oliveira. Am I right? Okay. She says it's more beautiful the way she says it. So, Melissa Hart and Kathleen Van Horn. The Scanlan Center has, it was launched back in June of 2021. It was a collaborative effort between the Iowa Department of Education and the University of Iowa. And it was really with the purpose of mental health research, training, clinical services in schools across Iowa. And Sarah has worked so hard at looking at opportunities, and we have forged an amazing partnership with the Scanlan Center for School Mental Health. The fellowship that you'll hear about tonight really encompasses our mission and vision. We are really working at growing our staff and their resources, understanding and support to help the kids that we serve each and every day in our schools. And then it also is well embedded in priority 2 and 3, learning and achievement for all, and student accessibility and supports. So the people that we have here today presenting, they touch all students, whether they're behavior interventionists and they're helping students at elementary school, they're part of the therapeutic learning classroom and they're helping those students identify to receive those supports and services, or they are part of a special education classroom where they are helping students that need additional supports, whether it's with behavior or academics. So the training that they're going through is really about how do we best support all of our students in helping them be successful in our schools each and every day. And so looking forward to sharing with you all of the great learning that they have done. Like Dr. Morris has said, they have been a part of in-person learning, and they are also involved in modules and learning through those modules, and you'll be hearing more about this tonight, but just so proud of this work and this opportunity, and looking forward to hearing more about what they have to share about their learning.
All right. Thank you, Celeste. I am super excited about this opportunity. Like Karen shared and Dr. Moore shared, that we really are looking at a collaborative relationship with local universities. So we've talked before about different partnerships, and this University of Iowa opportunity was outstanding. So in regards to the para fellowship, the opportunity that's there is really about looking at safe and supportive schools, and how do we create cultures of safety, and through that is mental health and sense of belonging. Another real key critical opportunity, you know me, I search for how do we help support our staff. My heart is for our staff. How do we help give them the needs that they have to have access to? And paraeducators, and when we do this work, we really need to look at how do we do better at this? What do we do as a district? So this was an excellent opportunity. Go ahead. So I'll tell you more about the opportunity. The fellowship and funding, when it came from the University of Iowa, was specific to, here are these dollars that are allocated to paraeducation in your district, okay? And so while the award was looking for schools across the state of Iowa to apply, there were 5 spots we could apply for each. However, everybody across the state of Iowa got so excited about applying for these funds, because this is up to $60,000+ for the district to help support paraeducators. And so they kind of got stuck and went, oh no, they were overwhelmed. So each district was given certain specific feedback, and we received 4 of the paraeducator awards, and they actually gave 4 to each or less, because they didn't want to give up to 5 because it was so competitive across the state. And so that was really exciting. I know even I was in contact with a couple of the paraeducators that wanted to apply for this. They were like, tell us, is it out? And I was like, I gotta wait for the award acknowledgement. You know, we were on pins and needles, so that was super exciting. So the funding piece is that the district received $7,000 per para to support expenses and overhead for training and the modules that they themselves will share with you, no spoiler alerts, right? And that any of that $7,000 per para, so per position, that's left over, we retain for further paraeducation training and thinking through with the those that attend and through our lens, what else? What do we need to do to help better the process? And then the exciting news, which is really super exciting, is that a total of $8,000 per para. So that there is a $2,000 disbursement after they finish each module of learning. So it's super exciting that we get to acknowledge the time that they spend doing the extra above and beyond what they're doing during the day already. That is a stipend that was there for them through this award and grant. So they're going to tell you more about it because I don't want to, but I do want to acknowledge the awesome opportunity that we have and these amazing folks that were the first to say, hey, I want to do it because they really are the critical part of this work. So I'm going to hand it off. Yeah.
So 15,000 per para total?
Yes. And so it's just an incredible award. And so another one that we are, getting because we are on the cutting edge of really saying in Bettendorf, we want to create safe and supportive schools where kids are here and that we can get all of our staff wrapped around. So yeah, that award, as soon as it was there, talking to Dr. Morse and my director, I was like, I'm gonna apply, you ready? And we received it, so yeah. Okay, so I'll pass it over. Oh, wait, sorry, I gotta tell the training components. Psych. Spoiler alert. The training components that they will talk about are the in-person training. That's what they're gonna talk about. So part of that funding is in-person training. Those 3 days, they go to Des Moines. They're gonna tell you a little bit more about those modules. And then, the in-person, and then the modules that I shared are an online simulated modules to help support mental health. So you do these scenarios in certain aspects. I'm just trying not to spoiler. So, because I myself went through it. So as soon as I knew that we had this award, we had an opportunity at Iowa Best when we attended conferences to go ahead of Iowa Best. So we were accepted in the pre-training as well to go through these modules prior to our paraeducators going through. So we knew what was learning and what was being done. So I thought that was pretty exceptional as well. Okay, I believe next slide. There we go. So now I would like for our amazing staff to share a little bit more.
Celeste, can you do the next slide, please? Sure. Thank you so much. So my name is Sam Farah. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do and what our first day one in-person training. I currently work at the middle school in the therapeutic learning classroom. This program provides supports to our most at-risk students with an empathetic approach, knowing that some of their behavior could be directly related to any trauma that they have previously experienced. Essentially, we are helping to rewire their brains. We want them to be able to identify what triggers their fight, flight, or freeze response before they become dysregulated in a classroom or hallway. One example of what something in my day might look like is I have a TLC student coming into our room for a break before they begin to feel escalated. They're starting to feel like they're gonna maybe explode a little bit, and that's what we're there for. So they come in and utilizing this broaching technique that I learned at the, that thing that we went to? Yep. This allows me to basically invite the student to open up rather than expect them to just come in and be ready to discuss what's upsetting them. So one of the techniques that we learned on day one was to broach a conversation by starting with an invitation to talk, listening to what they have to say or reading their body language before going to an observation, hey, I noticed you've been acting a little different than normal, and then following with a statement, is there anything that you'd like to discuss? Is there anything that I can help with? So really, again, it goes back to inviting the student to open up instead of just going up and saying, what's wrong, right? It gives them that chance. So another thing that they really pushed on in the day one is that as an educator, I can deliver a mental health intervention. I cannot treat, I am not a therapist, but I can broach the topic, I can screen, refer, and support any student that needs mental health support.
I'm going to be talking about the online learning aspect. My name is Kathleen Van Hornigan, and I've been a peer educator for almost 18 years with the district, and I work at the Bett North Middle School in the IB classroom. That's where I've been my whole tenure. And I'll be sharing with you today our portions of the online. So we have 5 modules, and so far 3 of the modules are open. Module 1 was completed as of Friday, so we all have finished Module 1. We are in the process of working on modules 2 and 3, and those are due November 30th. And then module 4 and 5 will be due, I believe, right before Christmas time. So each of the modules has a PowerPoint that we are asked to download, and then there are videos that we must watch. So we do that first, and then there is a case study that we must complete. It's like a reflection activity. And they give us like a scenario, and we give our feedback, as well as use the tools that we have learned in that module to answer how we would, what that student is going through and what we've learned in the module. And then we submit that, and once we've submitted it, we can see all the other people that are participating, their reflections. And then we are asked to go in and respond to 2 of the participants. And so then, at the end, we have to do video responses. So we go in, there's, it's called a skill setter, and there are 4 to 5 videos from students that topics can range from they're having an issue with a teacher, or they're having bullying issues, and it's them talking to you. And then once they finish, it starts, and you're on, and you have to video respond to that student. So there are 4 or 5 of those. And so that is pretty much what's happening in each of the modules that we'll be doing. And personally, I have completed Module 1. We all have completed Module 1. And I'm in the process right now of writing my reflection activity for Module 2. So that's as far as I will. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Deb. She's going to continue on with our second in-person learning that we did.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
When you do these video responses, where it's as if you were live with someone,
Right.
What kind of feedback do you get?
Right, we haven't gotten any feedback yet. It does go to the people that are doing the stuff, but I haven't heard back yet from anybody yet. But I haven't done the second module. So the first module was, this is before you've learned anything yet. So it was just, what would you, here's the scenario, what would you do? So the second module is what we're doing now. So this is after we've gotten some training. So I'm hoping now we will get a response back, but I haven't gotten to that yet. So we'll find out, and hopefully we will, because that would be helpful.
So I'm Deborah Oliveira. I am a behavior interventionist at New Armstrong, and I'm going to talk about what we learned in day 2 in-person training. It was a lot. So we started discussing about how to develop attending skills, which was part of the second module. The goal was to enable us to communicate effectively, build rapport, and develop relationships of trust so we can be the support that our students need. We learned 4 skills to implement in our approaches. The first one is opening, which encourages the conversation. So it's things like, I see you, I understand you. When we have the conversation with the students after we approach mental health with him, it's something that shows them that we are listening and we are engaging with what they have to share with us. The second skill is reflecting. It's where we can rephrase the student's statement to better understand, or we can identify the underlying feelings from their statement and express it back to them, or even identifying the meaning for their statement and express it back to them through better clarification in our conversation. The third skill is normalizing. It's where we normalize what they are feeling and what they are going through. So we learned how to build our statement, keeping the focus on them, naming what they are feeling, and restate the situation, showing them that what they are feeling are valid and are normal for the situation they are experiencing. And the last skill is self-evolving, so it's where we show them our reflection for the situation that they are going through. It's where we show them resilience, and we are also learn how to take care to not detract from the situation they are experiencing. Thank you. We also start learning our third module, which was a lot too. We learned how to recognize signs of trauma, crisis, and suicide, and how to approach a student who is displaying them. So using the FRAID acronym, we can recognize some signs of trauma and crisis and suicide, and if a student is displaying one or more of them, we then proceed with the first step, which is asking them how are they feeling in the moment. We can use some kind of scale, for example, from 1 to 10, 1 feeling I'm feeling okay, and 10 I'm feeling the worst. How are they feeling in the moment, and for how long have they been feeling for this way? And after that, by studying their answers and evaluating the risks, we then can approach for the second part, where we can ask them if they have been thinking about hurting themselves or their life. That was our second day in person, so it was a lot of information to take in, but we did learn a lot too, a lot of skills that are possible to add to our approaches in our daily routines and to be the best support for our students.
Of course, I'm the one that has to adjust the microphone. Good evening, I'm Melissa Hart. I am currently in my 5th year at Bett Middle School as a paraeducator, assisting the special education students with gen ed classrooms. Looking ahead, we have one more in-person training in Des Moines on December 1st, followed by the remainder of our online learning. Up until this point, we have been equipped with tools and knowledge to support students struggling with mental health challenges. Our training is going to take us further. The next step will teach us that if the trauma concepts broaching and empathy have been applied, a situation may arise where triage and referral may need to be utilized. There may be times that students will need a higher level of care than educators can provide. We will learn how to leverage our ability to recognize signs of varying mental health challenges and be able to utilize the tools learned to connect these students to the needed services and support within our school building through a triage and referral process. Our final and a very essential learning module will be educator wellness. While the majority of the mental health services focus on our students, it is also imperative to pay attention on the needs of our educators and school staff. This learning module is one that I have been personally looking forward to the most. As paraeducators, we have sometimes been referred to as the ones on the front lines. The team attending this training works in many different roles within our district, from the intellectual disabilities classroom, behavior interventionist, gen ed classrooms, and therapeutic learning classroom, putting us in a unique position to not only see where students may be struggling with mental health challenges, but our colleagues as well. We will build on the 8 dimensions of wellness to equip us with the knowledge of compassion fatigue, moral injury, and self-compassion. We will learn strategies to identify and manage our own mental health needs. Educators who prioritize their own wellness inadvertently serve as wellness ambassadors in their interactions with their students and colleagues. When educators are well, they are better able to meet the needs of their students. On behalf of the 4 of us, we are extremely thankful to the Scanlan Center for School Mental Health and BCSD for allowing us the opportunity to participate in this first-of-its-kind fellowship for paraeducators. Our hope is to bring the knowledge and tools we have learned to our buildings and the district as a whole, and to offer meaningful professional development opportunities to our paraeducator program.
So can we give them a round of applause? As you can see up on, there is another QR code. If you want to know more about the Scanlan Center and the resources they have, not only for staff, but for students and families, that is a great place to start. There's a wealth of research and information there to support everybody in our district and in our community as a whole. Questions that you have before we sit down?
So how is the district planning to, so we have these 4 amazing humans who are doing this work, right? This is a lot of learning. How do you plan to bring this then to the other paraeducators and educators?
Awesome question. There's always a plan. what we've been working on through last year, for example, I came to you and spoke about BMS and where we were at with the therapeutic learning community in regards to mental health, safe and secure school culture and climate matters. And so as we started to unfold that, I'm always looking for ways to make sure it's the right work and it's connected to our strategic plan, like not something else so it goes away, especially with funding dollars that are attached to that. So a large part of even the plan for that process, as you heard last year, we did a lot of intense training at BMS with paraeducators, and we brought forth what that looks like and sounds like. And we have that written in the other proposal that we have to help support paraeducators learn all of this and what this looks like. Now for this specific, with the funding that will be left over, the plan is to also work with the 4 of them, have a conversation around what we have planned through the therapeutic learning grant, because that's mental health and safe and supportive schools. Did we miss anything? What else? Where should these dollars go that may be left over to have some insight with some of our teams? So the plan is to keep broaching the training and getting better and making sure we're including this work, because we already started to do some of it. And now we just have to get better and more intense at what that looks like. And furthermore, the long range goal would be working through our district leadership team. What is our onboarding process? What are the long range components? How do we welcome paraeducators into the district and start with that training? And what does that look like and sound like? So there's always, definitely next steps and what does that look like and sound like? And for here, after they complete it, because like I shared, I've gone through the same exact training. Kevin Skillett, myself, and Karen attended. So we know what they've been going to and attending and doing. So very familiar with the feedback video. Stop, re-record, stop. But working with them and then working with our district leadership team to say, what's next? How do we do this and continue this work? Anything additional you'd add?
Just an additional note is over the last 2 years, whenever we've had paraeducator trainings that have happened when students have been at home and we've provided professional development, it's really been around the brain and how does the brain work and how do we get students from working from the base of the brain up into the academics where they can actually learn, and how to get them to recognize where are they and how to get them to connect to the environment. Yeah. So, other questions? Yeah.
I saw on the acronym you had FRAID. Some kids have difficulties with regulation difficulties.
Director Castro, will you pull that mic over towards you just so everyone can
With
hear?
regulation difficulties, can you tell me like some kinds of regulation difficulties that some of these kids have?
Yeah, there's a variety of different regulation difficulties that our students might have. We have internalizers and externalizers. And so when we talk about regulation, there's different, the variety and the wide spectrum of what that can look like and sound like. You might have some kids who can shut down, so they might be quiet or not speak in certain environments, and that can look dysregulating. You have some students who may not even attend school, like attendance. Chronic absenteeism can be a sign of dysregulation. You also have like externalizers, yelling or think of anybody who you work with, or maybe a spouse or somebody who gets on edge about something, that can look like dysregulation. So anything that usually triggers, we like to say fight, flight, freeze response, which is a biological hardwired response that every one of us in this room has.
Is there feedback after they're in this therapeutic classroom going through this back to the teachers and how the teachers can be aware of more things, or how's that transition work? See, I don't know anything about this, so that's what
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. We've done extensive work on the brain science of this and presenting and sharing that we want to give those tools to the teachers. This is about our staff that work with students. So intensely at BMS, they had training all year long, in order to continue, because the district was awarded the $570,000 plus from the Iowa Department of Education to continue exactly that training. We have been working hard at BHS, so the high school, continuing the learning, so they're getting some of the learning that BMS had. We are working at the elementaries in regards to the balcony level of understanding some of the components, but we know that they're rolling out literacy curriculum and want to be mindful of how much, because we don't want to dysregulate.
How many students can fit in that therapeutic classroom at any one time?
That depends per the grant and what we wrote. So for BMS, it was 11 students. And the others, I believe it's pretty much the same. Some of the elementaries, it was 8 students. So 8 to 11. That's under the umbrella of the grant, though, because we're tracking the data. We're doing all of that kind of intense work about, we don't want to overwhelm anything or not have enough. We want to have a good, strong system.
And are they working on anything academically while they're in the therapeutic classroom or not?
So the classroom is not a classroom like we like to think of a classroom. And I know that I believe coming back and sharing would be a great idea for the new award, but it's a set of services. So it's just like any Tier 3 plan we would write in school and have a behavior support plan or some kind of attendance plan at an intensive, individualized level. So it's a set of services that we provide. While we don't want to create where that is focused on doing homework, because we never want them to be sent there to be removed from a class. We want students to be able to go there, help regulate, not disrupt a classroom, right? Build into all the different individual interventions. And when they're ready, depending on their plan, go back and about their day. So our hope is not that they're doing work in the classroom, because it's a set of services.
Are any of these students on medication at all that come to see you or have these difficulties?
It's something that we don't discuss when we're talking about the plans. So that's individual. That's if the parents are meeting with us and want to share, divulge that information, they can absolutely do that. But it's something that we don't track.
And last question, as these kids work up from elementary to middle, is there like meetings between the elementaries and you folks at middle school, and these kids are having these issues so you can be aware of them when they get to 6th grade?
Yeah, absolutely. So transition meetings are critical in our district. Absolutely. We just want to get stronger and better at that. And that's like all kids, right? Well, the therapeutic helps support maybe that less than 5%, because it's around that 1% at our buildings. We want to support any student that might have an individual plan, whether it's academics or behavior or both, in transitioning and getting better at how do we do that, what does that look like. We worked intensely last year with my first year doing that, and meeting with BMS to BHS, helping support a few of those kids, and then we're working towards the elementary doing that as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a quick question. So in our community, and even in this room, we have a lot of people who don't support this work. They don't think social, emotional, behavioral health is something that schools should be focused on. Mental health supports, therapeutic learning classrooms, those types of things. What would you say to those folks about why this is so important, especially those of you on the ground in our buildings?
I want to come at this from evidence and research. This is never a Sarah-ism, right? This is evidence and research and what that says. What's really critical is that with school, so for example, Kevin Skillett and I just attended the Safe and Supportive School, the highest level of national CIA Safe Supportive Schools, where they talk, I know our SROs and police officers also, we do a lot of work with them and attend with them. And the number one thing that they talk about in a school setting is above and beyond physical, is psychological, social, emotional impact to kids. A sense of belonging in your school community and what that looks like and sounds like. And to get to that psychological setting for our school communities, there's certain work that you can leverage. And some of that work is those things that you listed. The executive functioning skills and 21st century collaborative skills, social emotional bully prevention. Those are the top indicators in the work to create safe and supportive schools. And that's coming through security, national leverage, National Association of Threat Assessment, safe and supportive schools. So that's coming from directors who are retired CIA, so on and so forth. So really grounding ourselves in the evidence and research is what I like to share. What that looks like and sounds like is really up to our schools within MTSS, and how do we deliver that, and what does that model look like? So it's not maybe a direct answer. I just like to make sure I leverage evidence and research and what that says in regards to that, because safe and supportive schools matter. So any additional?
Well, and you think of positive behavior interventions and supports, that really touches all kids. And then you intensify those supports as the data shows that students need more individualized supports, whether it's in a small group or individualized. And we're continually looking at data at each of the sites to see what is working. If we have chronic absenteeism, how are we getting at that with the families and bringing them on board to support them? If it is behaviors, what time of day is that happening? During what classroom is that happening, or subject area? And how do we help those students have the skills to be successful? Because what we're all about is giving them access to their right to a free, appropriate public education. And PBIS is well within all of the work that we're doing and that we'll continue to do, and that the state of Iowa and the Department of Education expects us to do. So,
I have one more question, and I actually want to hear from the paraeducators here. What is one thing that you have learned through this training so far that you wish every person understood? Because I can see on your faces that you have learned some really interesting things.
I have been a paraeducator with the district for 6 or 7 years now. I have been stationed at 3 or 4 different schools, and I have also subbed in the district. This training would have been extremely beneficial earlier on in my career. All behavior is a form of communication, whether that's an eye roll, a heavy sigh, a snicker, it's all a form of communication. And so being able to learn, I don't speak acronyms, SEL, social emotional. The fact is that this type of training and learning how to read that body language and how to respond in a way that a student feels comfortable, learning cannot happen until relationships are formed. Being paraeducators, we are there to build those relationships to get the kids learning. When a teacher is having a hard time controlling the classroom, we are the ones to step in, pull that kid aside, and try and get them back on track. We can't do that without relationships, we can't do that without empathy, and we can't do that without trying to fully understand what it is that they are trying to communicate. So I apologize if I completely went around. I don't know if I answered your question. But this is ground level work that would really help from the ground up at everything in our district. Even as far as our cafeteria workers or our custodians, anybody who comes in contact with children has an opportunity to be their preferred adult and build a safe relationship and make them feel welcome at school. So, I mean, this training could be incredibly helpful for everyone, really.
I agree.
I won't put anybody on the spot with a question. I just want to say thank you for what you do, but going out on a limb and being the first ones to do this, it's amazing. So thank you very much.
Before you guys sit down, Sam, thank you. Those words were very powerful, what you just shared. I appreciate that. But Sam, Deb, Melissa, and Kathleen, thank you. I echo Director Champion. Thank you for saying yes and taking this risk to put yourselves in this place of learning when you didn't really know what you were signing up for in some ways. But thank you too for the time away from your families, the time spent on the road to travel to Des Moines, to learn, the time you're spending outside of your jobs, to complete the modules, and for being here tonight. Your leadership, your willingness to jump in feet first with this work doesn't go unnoticed and is definitely deeply appreciated. So thank you. We look forward to continuing to learn from you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Deb and Melissa for going to WQAD tomorrow. On the current with Shelby. So thank you very much for nobody needs to watch.
Thank you very much. What a good reminder for us too, Celeste. Thank you. We'll tune in. All right. That brings us to 5.03, district student data update. And you don't have to say. You've done your time, so if you need to slide out, feel free.
She's giving you a free pass run. Good evening, everybody. We are here, Rhonda and I, to give you kind of the academic side. We just looked at the SEPH side, what we're doing for students there. And this is a combination between kind of updating where we're at with some curricular things. We're doing some great things across the district. And then we're going to go over some data from our ISASP, which would have been this spring, and then our benchmark data. So I changed it up a little bit with some feedback from different individuals on how to show you this data. But obviously, when we get started here, it's all around our mission and our vision. Everything we do, all the decisions that we make are centered around staying true to that. So our first priority that we're looking at as we start to look at our curriculum and what we're doing is that priority 2, learning and achievement for all. So you know when I present, I always make sure we put in student pictures because this is what it's all about. When we're talking about data and we're looking at numbers, behind every single number is a student or a group of students, and it's always important for us to remember that and where we're headed with that. So to highlight some of our curricular things, these are pictures of students that have been actively engaged in our new CKLA literacy curriculum. Our teachers have done a phenomenal job of navigating a brand new curriculum that is very different than what they've been doing prior to this. And these pictures show a lot of different opportunities that our students have had. It's very cross-curricular. You can see at the top, part of it is learning about the human spine, so we're bringing science into it. And then our bottom ones, a couple of them show how we're bringing social studies into that literacy. So it's not, everything's not standalone. So just as a reminder of where we're at, this is our first year of a district-wide implementation of UFly. If you remember last year when we came to you, we talked about UFly, and we had buildings in our district that did not have that foundational skills component. And so those buildings started last year with UFly as our way to kind of give that gap year while we are still trying to find a literacy program. But this is the first year that every building across for K-1-2 are using UFly. And what's critical about that is UFly was meant to kind of fill in that gap, but teachers dove right in, head first, minimal training. I'm going to own that from the curriculum side of things. We got the books, we handed it to them, we did the best we could. They dove in and they loved it. They right away saw the impact that those foundational skills around phonics were making with their students, and when it came time for us to look at a literacy curriculum and come to adopt, they were very adamant that that was a resource that they did not want to lose. So with that, we adopted Amplify CKLA. And so if you look at this, K2 is focused on those knowledge domains of CKLA, and not as much as that skills and foundational skills, because we're getting that through UFly for our K2. But there are parts around that, and Rhonda has done a phenomenal job of piecing all of this together to make it flow as easily as possible so that we're getting what students need with the resources that we put in the hands of the teachers. And then 3 through 5 is built around those literacy units, and it builds right into those units those foundational skills around morphology and things like that. So what you can see here are our pictures. We had 2 first grade teachers there at Mark Twain who embraced teaching the body system. On their own, went out and bought that and wore that during class as just another way to engage their students in those conversations. And then you'll see that our first graders also got to be doctors for a day. And they went around and used what they had learned within their content area. And then Alice in Wonderland had her tea party one day. So, all right. So what's going well? One of the things is it's been a rough road. Anytime you implement something new, there's a lot of learning curve for that. Our teachers have been phenomenal at embracing all of the different turns and paths that we've taken. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to you is this is directly from the teachers. So we meet as district grade level teams. We start every meeting with what's going well. Some days there's a plethora of things they share. Other days you really have to use your wait time to get some things. But as you look at this, this is directly from those agendas. They didn't know that I was going back to the agendas. There was nothing there. I went through, Rhonda went through, and we read, and these are the highlights that they brought to those meetings. So our kindergarten teachers are starting to see that our students are recognizing those sight words in the text. They're using the vocabulary words correctly in their oral language. So they're seeing that transference of those skills that we're working with them in the classroom, and they're very excited about that. One of the big things about UFly are routines. It's the same thing, so students are within that routine and they know. And then they did a lot, their first unit worked a lot with fables, and the students really loved those and really got engaged. I know anybody who has a first grader, they came home and loved to share the fable that they were learning that day. I'm not going to read through all of this because you can all read, but I just want to make sure that each grade level has been able to find their highlights as they're going through that, and I know that we'll continue to have more as we work through. So, we've spent a lot of time with literacy, and K-5 literacy has been the main focus this last couple of years. But that's not to say we put everything else on hold, and that's the only thing that we've been doing. So on this slide is just to give you just highlights of what else is going on. One of the things we recognized is as we focused a lot on literacy, we needed to come back to that K-5 math reboot. That's our illustrative math that we do through Imagine Learning. We brought Imagine Learning in at the beginning of the year to do some additional training with our teachers to show them some of those deeper aspects to the curriculum that maybe through the shuffle of everything has just gotten put aside. Teachers embrace that. I think having a new literacy curriculum has helped them to see that math is going better. It's always kind of what you surround yourself with. And I think they're getting more confident in the math curriculum as we go. We continue our letters training. If you haven't seen or it hasn't been pushed out, Director Snow from the Department of Ed, they've just put out that the state of Iowa is now supporting the letters work and will be helping with some of the costs behind that. We are so far ahead of the game with that. We have a lot of our teachers trained, and then of course we are so fortunate to have Rhonda and Ryan King, who are on-site facilitators, to lead our live trainings. And if you ever go in, that's on a Wednesday, it's at the end of the day, they stay after contract time, and you go in there and they are engaged, they are excited, sometimes they're a little rowdy, but all of those great things because they're so excited of that work and what they're learning, and how excited they are to take that back into the classroom. So we have volumes 1 and 2 still going with our cohorts, and then if you remember when we first brought this to you, preschool finished theirs a couple of years ago, so all of our preschool teachers are trained. Through the lead of Rhonda, we have looked very closely at our instructional minutes at the elementary level and have been very intentional. That can be very uncomfortable. That's very hard for teachers because sometimes they feel like their autonomy has been taken away. And what it is, it's just about being very strategic about the time you have. We never have enough time. And ensuring that that's built in so that we can get students what they need while sharing the resources that we have within the building. So we worked at our K1 of getting that differentiated core in there, and Rhonda can touch a little bit more on that. And then our win time is what I need now. So often when we talk about interventions, we're talking about our struggling students, but we also need to remember our students who are at or above grade level. How do we continue to see them grow? Everything that we do is about student growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about proficiency, which is great because it's a point in time that you can look, but really it's about the growth that students are making, because if I'm just proficient but I never grow, that means I'm not making the progress that I need to be, although on a piece of paper it looks like I'm proficient. So that win time has become very intentional in looking at how we can meet the needs of all of our students. Aspire is the science of reading, and that's the training that we are doing at middle school. I believe in the spring when I presented, I was challenged by Director Smithson to continue this work into the middle school level. One of that was to start looking at what are the curricular needs there, but very similar to what we ran into with the elementary is that whole idea of we need to give them that foundation, we need to give them that knowledge, so when we start to look at curriculum together, we're all working off that same base. And so once again, we have Rhonda who went ahead and got trained to be a facilitator with that. And so all of our ELA, literacy academic interventionists, and special ed teachers are going through this on Wednesday. It doesn't have the same live components that Letters does. It's that asynchronous, but we've managed to set up a way for them to do that asynchronous, but bring them together for those critical discussions. Special ed has taken a different path because there were some areas that we needed them to hit earlier than our ELA and our interventionists, but they eventually come to the same point at the end. And I think teachers are very excited. What I've heard, and usually I only hear the bad news, but I have heard that they're super excited. I know one was anxious to start applying it right into their classroom right now. And so those are the things that I think just build our teachers' confidence to meet all students where they're at.
Jamie, can I interject right there?
Mm-hmm.
We've also had at the high school, Rhonda's working with Christy Kleppe and her team and some special ed teachers who reached out and a teacher wanted to try some of the U-Fly resources. Saw great success with it, has asked for additional resources for other teachers, and they're collaborating with Rhonda to learn more about the U-Fly and how to get those resources into our classrooms for students with IEPs. So we're starting to see this ebb and flow into all levels of our organization, and so it's exciting work that's going on. Sorry, Jamie.
No, interject anytime. So at VMS, the other side of that we're looking at is we're doing some math professional development with the AEA. Kim Awald and Rachel Dierks are leading that for us. And that is all around looking at the environment. And it's based on a book, Unnecessary Conditions, and it's just setting that stage for students within their classroom. Math can be very anxiety-ridden for people. It's often one of those things you love or hate it, or you believe you're good at it or you're not. And when you get to middle school, if you've had years of not feeling success in that, how do we change that mindset? How do we get you to feel comfortable? And how do we help those students? Because we know middle school is now that gateway. It used to be high school, it used to be 9th grade was that key. And really what I learned in 9th grade math is now taught in 7th and 8th grade. And so it's critical that in those years that students are engaged in getting what they need. I've heard a lot of positive feedback from that also, ways to reach students. Sometimes, and I think Sam said it the best, sometimes it's not about the content, it's about the relationships and the safety that the students feel within your classroom. And that PD is around what does that look like in a math classroom, and more importantly, within a secondary math classroom. Because that is a different type of atmosphere for students. You don't have them all day, and they continue through that on Wednesdays. BHS English, they're working on a common writing rubric across content areas. Writing is not just in English. Writing is in all areas. And how do we help students to feel confident in that, and also staff, and what are they looking for and how do they help? Conversations I remember having at middle about, essays is what is the focus on the essay, because you have the writing components and then you have the content components, and how do you bring those together so students can feel confident. So they've worked really hard on getting that common writing rubric, and that pushed out to all teachers that would need it. I don't know, Haley, she took the free pass and ran. But Pathful Explorer is our career information system, and we really rebooted that this year. We've had that for a few years, but somehow the training kind of got lost in the shuffle of getting it. And so this year we committed to ensuring that all of our secondary staff were trained in Pathful, because career readiness is something that we all need to embrace, and that we can all help students to answer questions, to help guide them, and to give them the support they need as they make those decisions. We are starting, we started last year and we're continuing our vertical articulation meetings between 6-10 ELA teachers. That's that core of how are students progressing through, and making sure we have those common expectations, that common language, and we know what is being taught where. The English standards are a little bit more challenging. The math really build on each other, but the English, they kind of just add one extra word each year. And so it's not as delineated as we might be used to in some other subject areas. So ensuring that we're meeting the needs of students, and that above and below know what those expectations are, and getting that common message out. And then BHS Algebra has really embraced the idea of the MTSS framework and how to get those tier 2 supports. I will say in all of the trainings I'm in, that's one of the biggest challenges I hear is at the high school level. How does those interventions look? Students don't all have math at the same time. In our case, they don't necessarily take math for an entire year. So how do we build in those tier 2 interventions so we don't wait till the end, or we don't wait till midterm to find out that a student is struggling? They have embraced, with the help of the administration there, to create a schedule where they can share students, which is often unheard of at a secondary level. But they take a look at their common formative assessment data, they regroup, so they may still teach those lessons, but they're able to share and better meet the needs of students, versus me being an algebra teacher and trying to meet the needs of 4 different groups of students. I can share and maybe only have to plan for those 2, and I can really dive into that. So always before I want to show data, I want to say we're doing great things. The data is what drives the decisions that we're making. And so our next slide is going to move us into our ISASS data. So remember, this would have been what we took in the spring. The difference between the 2 sets of data that we're going to show you tonight is that this is an outcome evaluation. So this is that one shot of here it is, this is where they should be, and we get it, we take it in the spring, we get the results in the fall, and then we work off of that. So as you look at this, the question we're asking ourselves is, did students meet grade level expectations? One of the hard things, because the difference between the data I'm going to show you now, that I just always want to keep in your back of your mind, I'm showing you proficiency data. A key, though, that is always missing when you do this is the growth data. I can be a student that's maybe in the 10th percentile or things like that. I can make tremendous growth. I can make more growth than the average student, but I may still be non-proficient at the end. So remember that this is that overarching data that's out there that everybody sees. However, as educators, that's only one part of the data we're looking at. We're really looking at that growth data and then our student groups. So our first slide is going to show you, for those that don't remember, go ahead, you're right.
Jamie, when you talk about the ISASS data, that is basically what we're talking about is one point in time, right?
One point in time.
One day when I took that test.
Yep. Yep. And this kind of explains.
Did you
I
break
killed
the
it.
microphone?
It's done. Good news is I have a loud voice. I swear my mom can hear me blocks away.
People at home.
So this is given to students in grades 3 through 11, and it's reading, language arts and writing, mathematics and science, but note that science is only given in grades 5, 8, and 10. So that data is a little bit harder to track over time because it's given, all right, thank you, Celeste. It's only given in those specific grade levels. Just a reminder, the data you're going to look at, there were changes in the tests last year when we took it in the spring, different than the year before that. Now, they'll tell you that they took everything into account, that it's comparable data. Whenever you change anything within any sort of assessment, there always is that room for things to change. So reading became adaptive, language and writing became a single prompt. Prior to that, it was 2 prompts. I don't know, no one told me, but I think they found out that was a whole lot to grade and to give feedback on when every student in grades 3 through 11 in the state of Iowa gave 2 writing prompts. It took us an awful long time to get that data back. So now it's down to 1. Math is in grades 3 through 11. There is talk about eventually that becoming an adaptive test, but as of right now, I don't believe it is, although we haven't met with the state for kind of our overview of ISAS this year. And then science became an adaptive test also. All computerized, and it has to be taken mid-March to mid-May. For us though, it's really always the end of March, April and May, because it has to start in the 4th quarter, and our 4th quarter tends to always end at the end of March. So this year, as we're looking at, I just had to do the survey for the test on our testing window. The earliest that we can start is April 1st because of the way our calendar falls, although the window opens like March 17th or March 11th. We can't take it even if we wanted to then. So the next slide is going to start you with the actual data. And what I want you to see is these are the students that are falling in our proficient or advanced. So those are, when you get the data, it breaks it down to your non-proficient kids, your proficient kids, and your advanced kids. So anybody that's proficient or above is considered to meeting those grade level expectations, which is what I said this data is meant to show us. What I want you to understand with this though is these are different students. They're the same grade, but they're different students. I'm going to show you what I call cohort data a little bit later on, where you can track students across time, but this is different groups of students.
Could we just move diagonally?
You can, but I did it for you, Director Lynch. That's how much I care. No, you can go diagonally. I went back one more year to show you kind of that 3-year push. So when you look at this, you can see that we have some areas for improvement. I always look when it's 1, 2, 3 change. That's pretty minimal. The 4 kind of is one that is red flag to me in my head, what's going on. The other side of that I always think is that's the first time they've ever taken this type of assessment. The ELA is a little bit harder to break down because they combine it all together. So this is your reading, your writing, and your language test into one score. And that's the only way they give us an overall proficiency score. We have to dig in deeper on our side of things to look at what that looks like in terms of writing, in terms of reading, and in terms of language.
So I just want to kind of make sure I understand. Your reading comprehension, which is one of the tests, correct? Plus your language, which is where you're actually doing the grammar pieces,
correct?
Right? Plus the writing, where you
that
have
single
one prompt that you write on that is all put into one.
Into this one score. So they don't give it to us, they don't tell you in each separate one as an overall grade level. You have to go individual student by student. What they have done that's been really great that they started last year is they give you some more breakdown on the broader view of things, not necessarily an item analysis for your district, but overall. And that's really helped our teachers to look at what to focus on and areas that just seem to be common struggles for students. Obviously the writing is something that I predict we will continue to see grow, especially given the changes that we've made at the elementary level for our K-2 students. Obviously it doesn't happen as quickly because this doesn't start until 3rd grade. And so those kindergartners right now that have a evidence and research-based curriculum, they're using UFly. By the time they get to 3rd grade, hopefully, this data will show all of those efforts that we've put in place. Questions on this slide, or do you want me to keep going and you ask them all at the end? I will keep going. All right. So next is math. Again, very similar. This is an adaptive test. It's in two parts. So they take the first part. When they get to the end of that, they submit that. Based on how they did on that is where they start into the second part. So it's not adaptive like some tests where every question you get right or wrong, it will change the next question. It's really adaptive by sections, which is a little bit different version of adaptive tests than maybe a lot of us are used to, if we're familiar with that. Again, you can see some highlights. Highlight grade 10 between those 2 years made an 18% gain. That is huge. And if you look, our lowest was at grade 3 with that negative 5% change. But if you still look at that, we're at that 75%. And I think as we continue to look at our math and that reboot, that those scores can start to go up. Next will be science. So science, the challenges that we see here is obviously it's a little bit harder to follow groups of students across the time. So 5th grade, you have to remember, first time they've ever taken any sort of standardized science test. I think one of the challenges in grade 10 is by that point you're taking a wide variety of science options. So what you've been exposed to at that point in time when you take that could look very different. And when you're looking at standards that way, it just poses some questions about what are our students already had and what have they not. Going back to math, I remember when I was at Neil Armstrong, the 5th grade teachers were always very worried because a chunk of what's on ISAS is in one of their last units of illustrative math, and that isn't something that they have gotten to by the time the students are testing, so they really worry about that. And that's something we just work through and say, what is the crucial part of that we might need to expose them to? But I think that's where science has its own challenges. But we're going to continue to look into this and continue to see what we can do to better support our teachers and our students with that. So this is that cohort data. Like Director Lynch said, if you would have gone diagonal, this is what you would have gotten when you looked at that. So I just used 8th grade just as that sample as you look. So currently these are our 8th graders. They're sitting in seats at middle school right now. When they took the data you're looking at, they were 7th graders, and 21-22 they were 6th graders, and then 20-21 they were 5th graders. So it's going down as you read across that to look at that. If you look at 4th grade, you have to think they only start taking it in 3rd grade, and that's why you don't see anything for 21-22 or 20-21. I did not go back any further because you hit the COVID year where we didn't take it, and then you hit that first year that ISAS was came out as the new state assessment, and it was a different version of the test than what we're seeing now, so I chose just to cover those last 3 years.
So, Jamie, I just want to, so those are the 8th grade, so that would have been 7th grade was 78%, correct?
Correct.
And then you see that dip at 60, for the 6th grade year, which is
Yep.
a general, you generally see the dip, right?
Yep.
In 6th grade
Because
and
you're
9th grade, because you're
transitioning.
transitioning to a different type of school.
Yep.
And then 75th, okay, that makes sense, so 5th, 6th, 7th.
Next will be the math data. Obviously, it's the exact same way. I stuck with the 8th graders just because you can see them across that time frame, and you can do the comparison. Again, this is as close to apples as we can get. The thing you always have to remember, students move out, students move in, but overall, this is close to cohort data that we can show you. I did not do science cohort data because it's given in 5th, 8th, and 10th. There's not a lot. It takes a while for that next group to get tested, and the test hasn't been around long enough to get all the way back to where that beginning is. So our next one, so questions on ICEPs. So we're gonna move into benchmark data, which is more of our universal screener. We can keep going or we can take questions. All right, that was my version of wait time. So priority 3 is kind of where I see the universal data and the benchmark data that we're going to start presenting to you. Remember, we said what we just looked at was outcome data. Are kids meeting grade level expectations? This data that we're looking at is this universal screener. This is that 3 times a year. It lets us know right now where our students are. And this is the data we dig into right away. That our teachers, our AIs, our special ed, everybody is digging in this data to say, how do we meet the students' needs right now? ISASP, remember, we get it late. It's a little bit harder for that. This is that data that we're going to commit to. So our next one, you can go one more. I'm going to turn this over because we have an in-house expert on all of this, and she's going to walk you through kind of the idea behind a universal screener. Our version is fast version.
Hi. So universal screening has a different purpose. All assessment should have a purpose, and they all answers different questions. So universal screening helps identify what students and systems are at risk. So oftentimes when you look at the numbers, you think of the students, but really the benefit of universal screening is it really is a good indicator of how your system is doing, how your tier 1 classroom instruction is meeting the needs of students. So when you think about where we were last year with evaluating our core instruction, it was very difficult to start chipping away at that when we would get this information because we didn't have a viable and standard across the district for what our tier 1 really looked like. So when you see that proficiency goal of 80% of students are not at risk, that is really just based on service needs. It's not really like 80% is we're happy and thrilled, we have more work to do when we're at 80%. But generally speaking, when you have 80% of students not at risk, your 20% within MTSS will, with those layered supports, get the rest of them to proficiency. The progress goal is one of Iowa's also target is that 95% of students who are not at risk will stay out of risk in the next cycles of our testing. So it's standardized, it's technically adequate, it's been tested to be predictive of future reading success. So that's why it's my favorite type of test, honestly. And it's always connected to instruction and next steps. So when you think about what is the universal screening measure, of course you have my rope that I always like to show you. It's not really mine, it's Scarborough's. But our teachers with letters have been trained in this particular theoretical model. So our universal screening aligns very well with that learning. So at the bottom where you see word recognition, those strands are supported by our curricular resources of UFly and oral reading fluency, which is developed in CKLA as well. But phonological awareness, decoding and spelling, and sight recognition are those very critical components for lifting words off the page that we have subtests of FastBridge that we can use for looking at how they're doing in those areas. When you look at the upper strands, all students have access to CKLA knowledge, which is where we really spend the bulk of our time looking at language comprehension. And A reading helps with that. The end goal is always skilled reading, which A reading has a comprehension component as well. So those combines rope strands. That's where we're going to get 100% proficiency. Okay, back to Jamie. Did I do good? She said you need to be. Let's go.
She loves what she's talking about, and sometimes she goes over all of our heads. But we love her for that. So what I'm showing you right now is more of the longitudinal data as you're looking at this over time. So we went back to the fall of 2021 and then took the fall of 2022 and the fall of 2023 across the grade levels. What you have to remember with kindergarten and first grade, they take what's called early reading. That's a one-on-one test, and it's measuring those critical early reading skills. And so that's totally different than the A reading that we're going to look at next. However, it's getting those foundational skills. And so over time, you can see from 2021 to 2023, we got back up. We took a dip last year, brought ourselves back up. But again, these are not the same students as you look at that across the time. And that's always critical because although we want to see where they're at, we're not comparing apples to apples while we're doing that. What we're seeing with first grade is that we did take a dip, a significant dip in my mind with that. We did identify where that is at, and we've done some accelerated work with some of our students that have shown that dip for us. So we took that data and really ran with it to figure out why, what was behind that, and have done a lot of work to ensure that we're accelerating their learning even more now.
Team, what kind of work does that involve and that you do with those kids?
So one of the things that we looked at, we had a handful of classrooms where that 80%, where we would want everybody to be at, they were not at that. As a class, they were below that 80%. And so what we did was some accelerated learning in UFly with that. So we continue to move along, and you're probably much better explaining this than I am, so I'm gonna step away because I can tell over there, she really wants to say it, so you go.
So one of the classrooms where the students came in not prepared for grade level content, what they decided to do was instead of starting at the first grade traditional scope and sequence, there were skills that they had to build before they could get there. So with our strategic scheduling and our resources, that classroom, instead of keeping all the same children, they're sharing the students who have the biggest need, and they have gone back to the skills that they're missing. And so then they have 2 blocks of time where they're getting those deficit skills, and then in win time, they're getting additional practice opportunities. So basically, when the other students are getting 1 lesson over 2 days, they're getting a full lesson a day, and that progress monitoring we're tracking very closely, and it's showing a lot of accelerated growth. Yeah.
All right, our next one will bring us into our A reading. And here you're looking at grade 2 and grade 3. So what you can see is from 2 years ago, we've gone up in both grades. We went down 1% from last year for our second graders, but our third graders, you can see, are continuing to climb. I think that that is due to all of the work and effort that we've been putting into K-1-2 with those foundational skills. That third grade is where they're moving from learning to read and applying that to reading to learn on that other side. So that's always that critical year. You have students that are at a lot of different places, so that growth is very exciting for us to see, and we hope to continue to see that. So next is our 4th and 5th, and then our 6th grade also. If you remember, last year was the first year that we brought in all of middle school, so you'll also see 7th and 8th on the back side. From the state side of things, we do K-6. 6 is always a little bit trickier with us because it goes to the middle school, but it still follows that K-6 model. And so as you can see across the board here, we continue to see that growth over the last 3 years, although you can see that we've had some points where we've increased and gone down a little bit. But I'm very excited to see that we're staying steady. And I think that that will only continue to grow as these students that are currently benefiting from those foundational skills move up. And then finally will be our 7th and 8th grade. You can see that our 7th grade did fall. And what that tells us is that we start to look at maybe 6th grade and what was going on, because they're coming in. It's right away at 7th grade. And ensuring that we're going back in our interventions at middle school to meet those gaps that those students are having. Interventions at middle school are taking place, and they're very focused on meeting students where they're at. Rhonda's done an incredible job of working with those teachers, because we do have students that go back all the way to those phonics skills in a middle school setting, and that can be tough. These are students that often for many, many years have struggled to read. It's not something they enjoy, And now we're kind of taking them back to what they often see as the kiddie skills and things like that, and finding a way to engage them and get them to have success.
In this, for example, I can look at the first column on kindergarten, the second column on the right graph, and those are the same kids, right?
Should be.
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me when you say, well, we went down. I don't know how you know that. You got a different group of 300 kids.
Correct.
So how do you know you went down? How do you know it's just not a different,
You're
completely
100%
different demographic?
correct.
That's not even good data. What's good data is the cohort, like you're talking about, where it's like, I want to know what the kindergartners did, and then when they were first grades, where they are, and where the second grades, where they are. But I mean, looking at the kindergarten here, 71, 68, 73, that's probably not even statistically significantly different.
Where I would challenge with that is that's how we use this data is very different than how we use the ISAS data. So you're correct. If it was ISAS data, that's why those first two slides I showed you was just that comparison side. But to me, it's the cohort data. This is the data that shows us where those kids are at that point, and we're going to intervene right away because we know that our interventions, and we're going to show you how we do what we do with that data. And that's why I say it's two different sets of data that you're looking at, because this is a screener, because this is predicting where they're going to be later on. And so I'm just showing you across time what it's looked like, because often we want to know where were we in the past, and that's what I'm trying to show you.
How does this predict where you are going to be in the future when it's just a snapshot in time, just like the ISAS?
Well, that's what we explained with the universal screener at the beginning.
No, I understand, but this is math. This isn't your language.
The results come back, this data comes back quick, like this is immediate.
That you have it right in your hands as soon as the student finishes. So a universal screener isn't just literacy. A universal screener is for, in our case, math and literacy.
No, I understand it, because this is the math one now.
Correct.
I'm not understanding how this predicts where they're gonna be when it's just a snapshot in time any different than ISAS. I know that this is 3 times a year, I get that. But how does that predict?
All right.
So the test makers test this across the country, and then they track it over time. And so then what they do is they look at the different, so when you look at this, for example, actually go to the next one, or back one, Leah. So when you see the different color variations, the college pathway, the lighter purple, those students are at the level where realistically they're at very, very minimal risk based on that predictive calibration of ever having risk at all. The ones in the darker purple are at low risk, but there is still a potential that there is they could go to non-proficient. But then the bottom two, it's the some risk and high risk. Those are the ones we're the most concerned about. And those, as the test has been developed, those are what they use for predicting. So it's criterion referenced and it's norm referenced. So then across time you can compare to peers, or there's benchmarks of if students are at this level, this is the percentage of chance that they have continued risk at 3rd grade, or in this case, future.
Rhonda, it also looks at like the type of questions, correct? So like say for math, if they're missing, 4 or 5 of these types of questions, it shows you that they are at some risk of they're not gonna be able to go to the next level as well, correct?
Well, and it definitely has built on the foundation up into the learning trajectory as well, yeah.
And then it gives you the reports that you can then look and see where the kids are struggling, and that's what the teachers are looking at in that data. So the teachers aren't just looking at like this piece, they're digging way deeper into the data for each of the classes, each of the kids, saying, okay, like these 20 kids, they're in this at-risk piece because most of them are missing these types of questions, which means that we as teachers then need to put more focus on that particular thing.
It's kind of like this universal screening is if you go to the doctor for a physical and you have a temperature, but you don't really know what the cause is. So that's similar to what we're getting. We're getting a very quick view of where they are for risk. Then from there, there's a whole different type of assessment that battery that you do with diagnostics, which then you find out those underlying causes so that you can get to the instruction. Because really this is just reflective of what instructional changes have to happen. And for us, it was get a tier 1 across the board. So, does that help a little? I can give you more things about how these are developed. There's reliable and valid, and there's a whole battery of things that they have to do, so.
And we're gonna get, and that's important, this data is more our starting point for conversations on where to go. However, what we're gonna end this with is what do we do with this data? We can collect data all we want, but what are we going to do with it? And we've put some great things in place that really pinpoint where our gap areas are for students so that we can work. So our math data follows the same type of thing. Remember, early math is that one-on-one test that's given, and it's measuring that accuracy and the automaticity of basic facts and operations as students work through it. Karen's up next. So we have 2 and 3 that's following that data across time. This is where they move to A-math, which is that computerized test, and we're looking at those broad math abilities. Math's a little bit harder to pinpoint down. The information that we get from FastBridge with that isn't as clear. It's a little bit harder, so we do some additional diagnostic testing there in order to meet students' needs. Director Lynch?
I'm just thinking about.
Richard, can you use your microphone, please?
I absolutely can. I'm thinking about Rhonda's explanation from a moment ago. On this slide, we see 2 shades of purple for 2nd and 3rd graders. And on the slide before, we only saw the sum risk on K and 1. And I'm wondering, is that because you're too young to make that differentiation, or is that just a fluke of that particular set of data?
Nope, that is true. For K1 with that early reading and early math, they don't have the college pathway until we get to 2nd grade.
Excuse me. All right, I want to keep going. So here's your 4-5 data. And then you'll have your, yep, keep going, your 6, 7, and 8. It's touchy. It's a tough job. All right, so here's our data. This is now what do we do with it? We take that test 3 times a year. We take it right at the beginning of the year. We'll take it coming out of winter break, actually more towards the end of January due to the end of the quarter and different holidays that take place, and Mondays we have off. But really, I think the critical part is what our teachers are doing with this data. And they're excited. We've put in a lot of great processes to make sure that everybody's owning that data and they know what to do with it. So Rhonda's going to walk through what some of that looks like and take you through kind of our tiered system and how we support our students.
So when you're used to seeing the triangle, this is similar, but instead of looking at it with the red, yellow, green, this is based on the system of supports the kids are going to receive. So at the very bottom, that foundation is tier 1. So that's where all kids have the greatest impact from the classroom teacher. Primary core instruction, all students get it, and then that is where you really do your prevention. Then when you see on your universal screening data that you have some students who are qualified as being at risk of potential reading failure in the future, that's where then you're going to give targeted skill instruction in addition to core. So when we're talking about that strategic scheduling, all buildings now have tier 2 win time set aside. In fact, with our differentiated core, they also have additional core instruction time, which functions largely like a tier 2, but it's still just actually tier 1, but more. When you look at the top of the tier, that's where it's the most resource intensive, and it's staffing and time. The students who are at the highest risk need the most, which means that they need an additional layer, which is very intensive. And that's why we really want to avoid having too many students who need intensive intervention, because otherwise our system just can't handle it. When you look here, one of the things that teachers really need is they need data that they can actually just use consistently. So I made a Canvas course for them, which I think is just kind of funny, and all of our district data is housed there. And then there's different access points for teachers to go in and use and collaborate, because a lot of times time is a barrier for them for cross communication with the interventionists, the special education teachers, so we wanted to remove that. This is a graphic from my professor, Dr. Stephanie Stoller, just to be mindful of your first job is with screening. Look for what is your problem definition. What is the problem? Do you have a problem in the system? One day we'll stand here and we won't have any problems. Then the diagnostic piece, why is that problem happening? Develop a plan and then check to see if it's working through progress monitoring. That is MTSS, and that is what is happening here in Bettendorf. Alongside the teaming, which you hear a lot when we come, district teaming, building, grade, and student. So it just at all levels. And that's a big win, because that wasn't always there. Then this is an example of something that's housed in that data course. This is how UFly has encoding assessments every week. Classroom teachers put it in, it color codes for them, and then they can tell just from that data what students need additional practice opportunities for the skill that they just got done teaching. And then this is another example of some fun graphs that we have going on, and you can just see that progress monitoring serves to answer another question. Again, we don't just do assessments without having a purpose. It's, is it working? Is your tier 1 instruction and then those layered supports, is it making a difference? Shouldn't take long, it's brief, it's also standardized, also technically adequate, it's reliable and valid, has alternate forms so you can get the same measure across time. It's very, very sensitive to that instructional change, and you can just make sure you're looking for mastery monitoring and general outcomes measurement. And so over there, sorry, that last one, you can just kind of see this is what classroom teachers are using to collaborate. And that graph is indicative of students who are progressing really nicely, and then there's a student that then has some conversations to be had about what can we do to intensify that instruction. Any questions? Sure.
Okay, help me, Rhonda, on this one.
Okay.
Way back where it said what's going well in literacy, you said students are recognizing sight words and text and using vocabulary words correctly in their oral language. So along with that, sight reading is phonological awareness. Are those two tied together, where they can sound out the words as well as read them?
So phonological awareness is based on sounds.
Yes.
And then phonics is the linking of the sounds to the print. And so yes, they are linked together, absolutely. And a missing component for us has been the focus on language comprehension. And so to hear the younger grades remarking that students' oral language vocabulary is improving, when you think about a test such as fast-bridged A reading, which is largely vocabulary driven, that's very good news for us because it means that they're taking on that learning, and that will be reflected in our benchmarking data down the road.
Because we've talked about phonics before.
Always.
Thank you.
Always and forever.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Rhonda, you've kind of briefly brushed on it tonight. Can you just explain to our board that piece around differentiated core, especially in the K2 grades, and kind of what that now looks like as compared to what instruction looked like a year ago?
Sure. So last year, all 5 buildings had a phonics program. It wasn't all UFly, but they had 30 minutes a day of phonics instruction. And then in some spaces, we worked very hard to make sure they had protected intervention time. But differentiated core is the ability to take smaller groups of students by flooding the grade level with our professionals that are academic interventionists, special education teachers, and then they get more of that type of instruction, but in a smaller group with a lot more teacher feedback and a lot more reps because they have that smaller setting. So differentiated core is an additional 30 minutes. Sometimes in a classroom setting, if it's a group of students who don't have the high need, they'll have 2 groups for 15 minutes and they just rotate. The students independently practice things that they have shown mastery of in front of the teacher, so they're getting extra practice. but it just really protects that time and gives teachers the access to the supports and the help with extra staff.
Any other questions about any of that we presented or went over?
We'll just end with these two, our teachers across all grade levels have done a tremendous job of embracing the change that has come at them. As I entered math night last Thursday, I had a teacher in our organization come out and we were having a conversation about some of these changes and stuff, and she just remarked how much she is enjoying the new ELA curriculum, the U-Fly supports, the change in how we're delivering some instruction through that differentiated core, and that her students are further along at this time of the year than she has seen in any of her years of teaching, and she's a 10-plus year veteran. She's probably 20-plus years. But just the positive, and I said, are you receiving the supports, the training, the materials, everything you need? And she said, absolutely, and I know that if I need anything, Rhonda will have it to me before I can even finish asking. And so, yes, as they alluded at the start of this presentation, our teachers, especially in the elementary arena, have had a lot of infusion of new curriculum over the last 3 years, 3.5 years, but they have embraced it with nothing but the utmost professionalism and positivity. There are challenges to work through, but every time I'm engaging with teachers, they may say I'm exhausted, or there's a lot to learn, but I think also educators are perfectionists, and they get unsettled sometimes if they're not going to do their students justice, and they are to be commended for their vulnerability around this learning and willingness to try new approaches. And I think what we're starting to see, and as I hear, we just went through round 2 of regrouping meetings, and what I'm seeing and hearing from the feedback, the students are making great growth. And
Absolutely.
That hopefully is validating to our teachers that what they are doing is making a tremendous difference. And so would not happen though without the leadership of our curriculum team that is working day in and day out, having meetings, thinking, okay, this didn't go, just kind of reflecting. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes,
both of you.
the regrouping meetings, I came out of those meetings, the conversations our teacher teams are having. I'm one person, I'm trying to help them with structures and systems in place. Jamie is trying to match that with the curriculum resources that they need. And the work that they're doing, that they have taken on in those conversations, we don't wait till the next benchmark to make adjustments. We look at data at the mid-cycle after 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and then again we regroup and we make sure that we're constantly putting students in the matched instruction that they most need. And it took us quite a while to get all those things in place last year, and the accelerated growth is evident this year. So I'm looking forward to coming back for the winter benchmark data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to 5.04, policies. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the 3 policies as presented.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Jamie,
Dr.
you're
Marks.
not
No, I'm turning it over to you.
So what I have before you are 3 policies. These are actually the policies that are part of our desk audit from the state. And so there are some things that just had to be updated just with the changes that have happened. And some of it is after looking at it. I will say our 505.8 was way out of what we have been doing. So we went ahead and updated that. So with 501.3, when you take a look at that, what we really looked at is we have gone to hours instead of days. So our old policy still was reflecting a minimum number of days, and we've been at a minimum number of hours for quite a few years. And then at the there in the middle, what you're going to see is around that idea of that truancy. Our old policy talked about coming to the board and looking for guidance from the board on top of truancy. That's not really the process that we do. We bring you truancy data, but not individual students or issues that we're having there. So what it is ultimately, if we have done everything that we could, we've worked with parents, families, and students but truancy continues to be an issue, then at that point, we would follow the law and start looking if we needed to reach out to the county attorney and look at filing truancy charges on our parents. That is the last resort that we ever want to take. Obviously, it's about relationships and figuring out what we can do, but that is the law that we have to follow to that point. And then at the bottom was just updating some of the legal references that have changed over time. And then obviously when we're looking at that mediation side of things, it's not always feasible that the superintendent would be the one that sits in there with that knowledge. And so the designee who's worked with that can sit in around that mediation side of things. Questions with that?
Just real quickly, this covers all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school?
Correct.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, you look at things a little bit different at having been at the middle school level and the elementary level, but the law and what we follow is the same, correct?
I believe truancy laws only cover up to, you only have to attend up to 16.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Any other questions regarding this part of the policy?
Okay. So the next one I apologize for, and that's because track changes and I do not get along always very well. And so I would like to shout out to Christy Henson for cleaning up my track changes. And so there's a whole lot in here in red. It isn't necessarily what we were doing before was bad, it's just changed over time. And our different groups have changed and how we look at things when it comes to our Title I. So what you have there are two different policies. You have a regulation, and that one I'm bringing to you to delete. I think it's an extra policy that we don't need. It's not required by the law that we have that, although the other one is. And basically, everything that's in here is what we've already put into the original policy. It's just kind of repeating that in a more general term. At any point, we can always go back and add a regulation, but I just feel like it's something that we don't need because I feel like we're able to cover that in the policy itself. So there's a lot of red on there. I know that you guys were able to look at it a little bit earlier than just this moment. So any questions or concerns around what is I'm asking to update in this policy?
And I think you just said it, but this is more reflective of, I know we were looking at some changes to Title I and how we're engaging parents.
Mm-hmm.
This is reflective of those changes.
Correct.
To bring us into compliance.
Yep. And it's around Title I, but obviously we want to engage all parents. This by law is part of that Title I side of things, but I don't want you to think that just our buildings that are identified as Title Is are the only one that we're doing this work with. It's work that will be beneficial across the district, but per our receiving those Title I funds, these are things that are a requirement of that. And we continue to look at that. Obviously, both Karen and I are new into this position and looking at Title I and how we make the best use of that money, and more importantly, how we engage our families and give them the supports they need to help their students move forward with school.
I'm not trying to stump you, but at one point in time I looked up and I think it said something like 90% of schools in the United States are Title I, something like that. You know, are there any in Iowa that are not Title I?
Any schools?
Yeah.
So within our district, only 3 of our schools are Title I, or building wise.
But our district is Title I.
No.
You're not a
I
Title
thought-
I district.
Nope.
We're not.
We have 3 buildings that are Title I.
We have not qualified from a district-wide Title I perspective.
Got it, okay, okay.
So that's why I say this, I mean, technically this is written with those 3 schools
Got
in
it.
mind, elementary schools in mind. However, it's best practices across the board. And I have not heard that fact that 90% are, so I can't speak to that.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Roll call.
Director Eastman.
Yes.
Director Lynch.
Yes.
Director Peevich.
Yes.
Director Smithson.
Yes.
Director Castro.
Yes.
Director Champion.
Yes.
Director Dorder.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, good news, you're done with me.
Thank you.
That brings us to
You might
five.
say the same right back at you.
That brings us to 5.05, approval of the naming of the newspaper. Do you have a motion?
I move we approve the naming of the Quad City Times as the district's official newspaper for publications.
And a second, please.
Second?
Questions on this? Do it annually. Hearing none, roll call.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich? Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorner?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Brings us to 5.06, approval of resolution naming depositories. Motion, please.
Go ahead, Richard.
I approve the resolution naming depositories 2023-24.
I move we approve. Let me correct that.
Do you have a second, please?
Second.
All right, questions or comments regarding this?
Resolution we have not passed,
Okay. Any questions? Roll call.
Director Pevich?
Yes.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorner?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 5.07. September financials. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion for 5.07, approve September financials as presented.
And a second, please.
I will second that.
You didn't make me read it.
Thanks, Bob,
For
for being here this evening.
the adjustments, I think I captured what we talked about last time.
You did.
So obviously the right column is prior year, so it's highlighted. The other difference in this report from last time is we added an estimated monthly column percentage that's based on history. So we go back 3 years, and this is historically, this is how much we brought in by month. Then the next column is the actual, and then the cumulative total so that you can compare it to the prior year. I have the calculations for the remainder of the year for the estimated monthly totals for both revenues and expenses by fund. I didn't include that on there because it gets a little confusing as you look at numbers going down the line. So you'll see that in next month when we bring the October and hopefully November to you, you'll be able to see that that just continues down. But as each one of those goes, it is the average of the last 2 years for both revenues and expenses by month for the estimated percentages. The only thing that stood out to me was in the management fund, which is the third page, I think. There it is. It appears that, our expenses are considerably less than they were prior to this year. However, that payment hits October, and October's not on this report. So you'll see that the October expenses next month, when you see the report, are much greater than the prior year, but it gets you back to where you were on an annual basis. Are there any other questions about any of the funds? Did we capture what you were looking for?
Short answer to that question is, yeah. What are the big expenses you're expecting in October, the loan management?
It's the one more insurance payment that was submitted that hits that account in October. It was paid in October, so we got it at the end of September. Prior year it came in, all of them came together. This year one came outside of that. So that's the expense.
Any other questions for Bob? Anything else you need to share, Bob?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, hearing none, roll call.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorner?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Did he just give you a C? That's how it's done?
He just gave me a hard
Sorry,
time.
sorry about that, Jamie.
His was shorter than mine.
All right, that brings us to 5.08, LEP allowable cost. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion for 5.08, approve the SBRC request of $164,415.93 and allowable growth for LEP limited English proficiency allowable costs.
And a second, please.
Second?
Dr. Morris, anything we need to
It's the
share on
world's
this
best
one?
form. Every year.
It is an interesting form.
Yeah.
Now, this is just, as we garner additional weighting, additional funding, and additional students for our limited English proficient students, when you have to budget well before, the new year opens, sometimes you have to ask for additional funding so that we can support these students per the law.
Any questions? Bob, did I miss anything?
No, and it's done annually.
Yeah.
As well, so,
And that becomes general fund expenditure, correct?
yes.
All right, roll call.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorder?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Yes.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 5.09, gifted and talented job description. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve it as presented.
Second, please. Thank you. Dr. Morris.
So this job description that is before you is, let me start over. We've had a vacancy, a half-time vacancy in our gifted and talented program. We haven't had the need, so as you know, when we have attrition in a position, we are stepping back and reflecting as a team at the district office, but also with our building level teams to say, do we still have that need? So for a little bit, we didn't have the need. We are now needing that, and we have, this is a categorically funded program. This is not a general funded program. So any expense tied to this position will come out of the gifted and talented funds the state provides us to provide students who qualify for these services with their supports and services for acceleration. So this is not a general fund expense. When we had the opportunity that we knew we needed to post for it and look for some additional support, we recognized the job description was quite a few years old.
Antiquated.
Okay, as Karen said, antiquated. We recognized that it really wasn't describing some of the key areas that our teachers are focusing on in that area, and so we took that opportunity to update it to be reflective of the work that they're doing now, and so that is what is before you. If, with your approval this evening, we will then be able to post, and we're hoping to garner someone with this mid-year graduation cycle that's coming up. So, Karen, did I miss anything? Miley, did I miss anything?
The only other piece, if you scroll up a little bit, we tied it to the National Association of Gifted Children. Keep going a little bit. There you go. The knowledge, skills, and dispositions. Those are just really core tenets of what we're looking for.
I am going to take this opportunity because HR is getting ready to be extremely busy. So as we are reflecting and updating job descriptions, one of the pieces we have been given guidance on that we're missing from our job descriptions to be best practice were things, as you see at the categories at the bottom, physical requirements, body movement requirements, and lifting requirements, so that staff understand certain positions you're going to sit a lot more behind a desk, and other positions you may have to move, lift, those kinds of things. And so just trying to be as open and transparent with what those job duties could do. So it's just added piece as HR is continuing to immerse in best practice and learn that they bring to the table tonight as well.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, roll call.
Director Champion?
Yes.
Director Dorder?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Absolutely.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 5.10, resolution to set a public hearing. Motion, please.
I will make a motion for 5.10, approve the resolution to set public hearing for disposition of school property at 438 16th Street, Bettendorf, Iowa, for December 14th, 2023, 6 p.m. in the boardroom at the District Administration Center.
Second?
That was enough of the motion, it's entirety.
The motion, yeah, I would read the resolution.
Can I have a director read that for me, please?
Sure. Whereas the
Thank you.
Board of Directors of the Bettendorf Community School District has received a proposal to convey an interest in real property at 1525 Brown Street LLC for $600,000 and other good and valuable consideration. The property is locally known as 438 16th Street, Bettendorf, Iowa 52722, and is legally described as follows. Lots 1, 2, and 3 in Block 4 in the town, now city, of Bettendorf, Scott County, Iowa. Whereas it is appropriate pursuant to the Iowa Code, Section 297.22, to publish a notice of the proposed conveyance and of the hearing, and to receive and consider objections and petitions. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Bettendorf Community School District, Section 1, that this board shall set a public hearing on the conveyance of the above described property for December 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Administration Center located at 3311 18th Street, Bettendorf, Iowa 52722. Section 2, that the Secretary is authorized and directed to prepare, publish, and distribute the notice of the hearing. Do you want me to read that last piece? Passed and approved on this 13th day of November.
Thank you. Any questions?
This is just setting the actual hearing.
Correct.
Right.
The next meeting. All right, hearing none, roll call.
Director Dorner?
Yes.
Director Eastman?
Yes.
Director Lynch?
Yes.
Director Pevich?
Yep.
Director Smithson?
Yes.
Director Castro?
Yes.
Director Chapin?
Yes,
Motion
absolutely.
carried, 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to 6.01. At this time, any member of the audience may address the board with items or with comments about items of interest or concern. Citizens wishing to address the board during public comment must complete the public input form located in the back corner of the room in its entirety prior to speaking at the podium. Please state your name and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. As a reminder, Iowa law prohibits discussing specific employees or their job performance. We caution those making comments that what they say could violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy. And if they're unsure of the legal effects of their remarks, they should seek independent advice prior to their comments. All right, moving on to 6.02, Superintendent's report. Dr. Morris.
Absolutely. So I want to thank all of our sites for all that they did last Friday to honor our veterans that are in our community, our families, our community members, and our staff. I want to thank all of our veterans who were able to be with us this evening, as well as that were able to be at the different events last week. I just appreciate your service and the sacrifice you have made. As we talked about and had a resolution for, it is American Education Professionals Week. We are so grateful for all of our staff. It truly takes a village and a team to provide the high quality education to all of our students. Thank you to all of our amazing BCSD staff for going above and beyond each and every day for every one of our students and for every one of our families and supporting their own colleagues. Wednesday is National Education Support Professional Day. Wow, can't even talk. So a huge shout out to all of our BCSD support staff. We thank you to all of you for your support. Our paras, custodians, secretaries, bus drivers, operations and maintenance team members, nutrition services, and our outreach team. Our teachers, our administrators couldn't do what we do without you, so thank you. And then on Friday is Substitute Educators Day. We here in Bettendorf are extremely blessed to have an incredible team of guest staff that come in every day. Some of our guest teachers are literally working every day for us. We thank them for what they do to ensure that our students can continue to learn when their teachers aren't able to be in the classrooms. It's not an easy job, and so we're very lucky for that. You heard a lot about the hunger drive tonight. I'm extremely proud of our students, but I also not only want to thank our student council members but also their advisors. We have 3 student council advisors this year. Thanks, Les, we'll get right to that. Katie Mahoney, Christina Zimmerman, and Anna Fink. I know it's Katie's they've kind of divided up the duties in there, and Katie really took the leadership role, but it does take all 3 of them to support our students. What I love about their leadership is how they empower our students to really lead this work. And it was just incredible to watch our students not only focus on the high school, but bring this important cause to all students in our district pre-K through 12th grade. It's definitely something special. And the fact that in just 42 days, they raised enough food and money to serve 178,000 plus meals. I mean, that is a pretty incredible feat. And I just want to share this very short video that our students, that a student produced as a way to thank our community and our staff and students for all that they did.
Well, the Hypercheck season is over, and we want to give a big thank you to everyone who donated. With your support, we've raised over $30,000 in monetary donations. And that's not even counting the food donations.
And whether it was cash or food, your donations helped immensely.
Thank you to everyone who participated in the events, attended restaurant food benefits, and donated to the water fund. We can't express how grateful we are for your generosity.
Gee, these boxes sure are heavy. There must be a ton of food in here.
But for real, thank you. And hey, even if we don't win the competition, we're still proud to have raised so many donations that will help the over 300,000 people in Iowa suffering from food insecurity. So once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day!
So it's a student-led, student-produced video. Mrs. Kleppy?
I just wanted to mention Sawyer Fields in this, so if you've seen a lot of these videos all the way through, super talented. He puts together all these videos for student council and just amazing, just does a really good job. So I just think he should be recognized for that, so he's done a great job this fall.
Hence why I convinced Celeste to put it up today. And then we'll share it with our larger community on Friday in our weekly newsletter that goes out electronically. But agreed, he is extremely talented student who has done a lot above and beyond to produce something like that just really tells a story. And so I would be remiss if we didn't get to share it and brag a little bit about our incredible kids. We will have more formal recognitions at our next board meeting, but with a Monday night board meeting and lots of events happening over the weekend, we weren't able to get everything published. But our BHS speech and debate team hosted the Bulldog Invitational this weekend. Over 16 schools from across the state attended. There were 148 students, and we had 56 judges give of their time to help support this. We had 5 students placed in the top 3 in a variety of events, one of which was our student council or our student rep speaker this evening. But we'll have the more specifics next board meeting. But really, I want to thank the advisors for our BHS speech and debate, Joe Rankin, Carrie Toppert, and Micah Brotzman, who give so much time to make sure our students are well prepped and prepared to compete. But when you hold your own invitational, you are organizing from sunrise to sunset of when the event starts, things like concessions and making sure rooms were, what did I see, over 50 rooms used in the high school to pull this event off, but also making sure those rooms get reset up so class can happen on Monday. So really their leadership, and then the volunteers. We had other staff and community members come in, and key volunteers were Evan Duth, Cheryl Raskin, Stephanie Barnett, Paula Cador, and Gina Laughlin, for their willingness to volunteer and the numerous hours that they gave this weekend to make the event so successful. They weren't paid, they just came in to support our students and to support our staff, so that we could have a great event for students from outside of our area to come in and see. So very proud of that work. Swimming and diving, I had the privilege of attending diving regionals. It is always just a really special time to see our diving coach, Mary Dorter, who has been coaching for over 40 years, lead our divers just special. Our two divers were in what I learned later, the most competitive regional competition that night. So there were multiple regional events going on across the state. Top 32 divers qualified for state. We were in the most competitive. They had, I want to say, close to 25-30% of the divers who qualified for state came out of our region, which is pretty incredible that so many came from one region. And we had our two divers going into state ranked in the top 12, and they ended up placing 10th and 12th in the state overall, which was incredible. And then our swimmers finished second at regionals, and at state we had one of our swimmers place third in the 53 and 7th in the 500. So they did a really great job. They just wrapped up their season and the boys kick off. And so we'll bring more specifics to the next board meeting so they get formal recognition. And then Math Family Night we held last Thursday evening at Mark Twain. This was Marty Beck's leadership and coordination of this event. She too wrangled a lot of volunteers and administrators to be there. There was a solid turnout of families and students across our district from all of our schools that came in, primarily focused on elementary, who engaged in different learning games, puzzles, and activities with a focus on math. What impressed me the most was, as parents came in, how engaged they got in each one of the classrooms that were set up with different activities, and they were there like till the end of the event. Like once they came, they didn't leave. And we had raffles that night, and it was just the feedback I received from families as I walked around and engaged with students and parents was just overwhelmingly positive. So it was a way to just really get families to understand and engage in the math with their students. You know, when parents said I came to learn, so I could help my students. Just great feedback. So thank you to all of the staff, the teachers, administrators, and students who helped support this event. We had a lot of high school students there helping support and work with students as well. So it was a lot of fun and just had a really great time. So that concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Brings us to 6.03, Board Shared Communication. Director Lynch, may I start with you, sir?
It was a nice brisk morning at the middle school last Friday, and I was glad to be there.
Thank you. Director Dorder?
Nothing from me.
Director Pevich?
Nothing.
Director Champagne?
I will do my shameless plug for Bendorf Middle School Parent Link. And then I will connect back to the Veterans Day ceremony they had on Friday morning. How many flags are out there? 80. And you've obtained sponsorship for maybe 25 to 30 of them so far? Does that sound?
We're about halfway there.
Halfway. So they 80 flags, and those flags each cost about $25. And Parent Link had sent a link out. It's on their Facebook page. For $25, you can sponsor one of those flags, and that'll be your sponsorship until that flag needs to be appropriately disposed of. But they'll put a little name tag on there. So, and Alan said they had about half of them done. So Parent Link's trying to assist in that process of getting the rest of those flags sponsored so that they can keep coming back each year. So just something to keep your mind on. If you go to their Facebook page, you can do it, and you can even pay them via Venmo or just mail a check. So thank you.
Dr. Smith?
I just want to second that Parent Link kind of shout out. If you haven't been to their meetings and you're not sure what's going on at the middle school, you should go to their meetings. They have structured their meetings so it's not just a regular PTA meeting, but they have information for parents. So I wasn't able to go to the last one, but the one before that was information on what to expect from kids that age. And it's a great learning experience for families. Last week's, although I really hated to have missed it, I know that our curriculum department was there to talk about how it's decided what your students are learning in middle school. And so I think that's a really amazing thing for a parent organization to do, to ask parents to come in and have that learning, not just to raise money, not just to know what's going on, but to really be there to support the parents too. And I think that's a really unique use of that group, and I wanted to thank them.
Thank you. And Dr. Castro?
I'd just like to thank the district for what they did for all the veterans, and also especially to the culinary arts, culinary class at the high school.
That's
I
what the
couldn't wait
current
till
thing
after
was
the meeting, so I just indulged myself immediately with the cookie. So thank you to the culinary arts class at the high school. Very good, very good.
you.
I was wondering what you're doing down there, Paul.
Now you know.
Brings us to 6.04, the BEA report, and Dr. March, you're gonna give that to us tonight.
I am. So, Emily Colson, our BEA president, came back today after being out on a medical leave, and so she provided a written statement, and I'm honored to read it for them tonight. So it says, "Good evening. I was hoping to be here tonight, but unfortunately my first day back was a bit more taxing than I anticipated. But being back in the classroom with my students and team filled me with so much joy. Teaching is surely a passion of mine, so being sidelined was incredibly challenging. I want to make sure I'm rested to be back with my kids, so I apologize for not being here this evening. One thing I'd like to highlight is the passion our teachers have that drive them day in and day out. As the BEA president, along with association representatives, we have the opportunity to hear all of the successes, celebrations, as well as the struggles our members encounter. In all the conversations we have with our members, passion drives them, and we're incredibly lucky to have such amazing teachers that are dedicated to the students at Bettendorf Community School District. I look forward to being back at our next board meeting in December. I hope everyone enjoys their Thanksgiving break next week with loved ones." I also want to share something I should have done in my superintendent's report, but because it came in tonight, earlier today, a family shared with me who have recently, they're in their second year of being with us. They actually moved across the river to join our district because they just felt like where they were was not a match for their students. And I just want to share a couple pieces because I think it's important. It was just an incredible piece of thanking our staff.
Just to be clear, this is you.
This is the superintendent. This is not Mrs. Colson. This is me. It should have been in my superintendent report, as I said, but I think it's just a way, as we look at this being American Education Professionals Week, of a true testament to how our staff continues to go above and beyond on a daily basis for students. So they were talking about one of their children who is continuing to work through the concepts of social emotional learning, and this student has some special needs. They are now at grade level, and they have developed a deep appreciation and love for one of our apprenticeship areas of Wellman, and is working towards that apprenticeship next year. All this because of the incredible humans we have in Bettendorf as staff. For a long time, I'm going to skip that because I don't want it to be identifiable. But Bettendorf High School has given this individual their future. They are now at the Aviation Club, which we've brought information about, the P&B Club, which is a club with all 3 districts, which they've been going to every week. This family is thankful that their child is viewing themselves to have potential. Their other child has bloomed more than they could ever imagine. They think of the opportunities that this individual would have missed out on had they never come to Bettendorf. Long story short, they say, I thank you. I thank you, I thank the district for 2 years ago when we worked with them to help them make this difficult change for their families, because it gave their children a chance to grow in all areas in a future that they don't think they'd ever have if they had not come to our district. So I just wanted to share that because I want our staff to know that sometimes we don't always, they may not always hear the thank yous or what a difference that they have made to their, that they have made a difference in a student's life. But this was a very touching piece that was shared with me today, and I wanted to make sure it was said. So our teachers know how hard they work, but also that work that they give of themselves tirelessly does make a difference. Thank you.
6.05, Bessa.
You ought to just make Dr. Morse read it.
I'm gonna let Melissa read it.
Good evening. I want to start by saying thank you. We appreciate the district's willingness to work collaboratively with BESA, not only on issues that are brought forth, but most importantly, projects, particularly professional development opportunities for our paraeducators, like the fellowship at the Scanlan Center. We are so proud of the work we are doing and appreciate the chance to work together with BCSD to continue elevating the training we offer our staff. I'm excited to explore ways to bring what our team is learning through the fellowship to all of our paras district-wide. BESA held our monthly meeting on November 6th, and our roundtable meeting with Central Admin was earlier this evening. Our peer mentoring program met on November 1st in our respective buildings and will meet again on December 6th. Our new secondary paras in the district will have a packet sent to them in January to help prep them for their first experience with the program in February. We have multiple shout outs for classified staff again this month. Alan Hartley at BMS would like to recognize Adriana Cruz. Adriana is a guest secretary who's filling in the Student Services office. While new to the district, Adriana has proved to be a diamond in the rough. Her skills, attitude, and willingness to do whatever is needed has been extraordinary. I appreciate her ability to learn quickly and try to do things that she has not done before. We are lucky to have her. Heather Bett from Paul Merton would like to recognize Sarah Schenk. She always goes above and beyond to help whenever and wherever she's needed. She has stepped in to sub for 2 specials classes at one time, combining classes so both teachers could have their prep time. The students and staff of Paul Merton greatly appreciate Sarah's dedication to her building, staff, and students. Jill Breslin from Grant Wood would like to recognize Matt Burnett. I hope I said that right. Matt is amazingly patient and kind. He lends a helping hand wherever and whenever. Matt is one of the most flexible paras I have ever had the honor of working with. He goes above and beyond to make sure students feel seen, heard, and loved. He builds strong relationships with students and staff alike, and he's an amazing asset to Grant Wood. I can't brag on our classified staff enough. Their dedication to their teams and the students and families they serve is unmatched. They bring enthusiasm and empathy to their classrooms or offices daily and are a foundational part of the work that we do in the district. And as Dr. Morse mentioned, many are involved in events both in and out of the classroom supporting our students and families. I hope you all enjoy your Thanksgiving break and the time with your families, and if you're traveling, travel safely.
Thank you. All right, with that being said, that takes us to 7.01, upcoming calendar items. Thank you, Celeste. And then 8.01.
So moved.